where do we start?
I like the idea of the flow and the what do I got here? Let's start here.
Motivation and scaffolding.
Yeah. Definitely scaffolding. I have a graphics class here, and that's really what it's all based on. You teach them a few things at first, and they really like that, and then they build on that, and they use what they've learned, and they bring it into the next lesson, and they build on top of that, and it really culminates into the very end, where they can kind of use everything they've learned and without using the teacher or anything else, build their final product. So I think it's a good way to go as far as the graphics class.
I agree. Just in gamification in general, I think scaffolding is a huge aspect. I mean, in video games, which it seems the professor is focusing a lot on the gamification rather than just edutainment. But with games, scaffolding is just made so easy because with the leveling and everything, and you just kind of progress at your own rate. And if you can't progress, then you're not ready. So you just continue to build on those skills until you are ready to go.
Yeah, and scaffolding also plays a big role even in mathematics. I mean, each concept you teach there has to build upon, the concepts that came before and build up on that. And also, going what you were saying too about gamification, one of the readings that we had last week was mentioned about, the help files that are available in a lot of games or a lot of video programs that also work as scaffolding because, they can help people figure out what, help the students figure out, what they haven't figured, what they're trying to accomplish and understand the commands. Also, a lot of games have tutorials. So when you start out, it guides you through each of the, steps that you're trying to perform. And, how do you do this? How do you do that? And the games include all that information right up front, assuming that they don't just have expert gamers, but they also have more of the novice gamers at the same time.
Yeah, I was looking also at, so you spoke earlier about motivation, and I've been pretty lucky. The people in my class want to be that. It's an elective class, so they've already got that motivation inside, that intrinsic motivation that they're going to learn on their own. They want to learn. They're going to try to get better in their own way, as opposed to maybe if it was a required course where they have to take it and they come in with, I just got to get a grade, I don't really care about what's going on. Here in the graphics class, they want to learn, they're excited, and I've been really lucky and fortunate that I don't have to create that motivation for them.
Yeah, I agree that I think I responded to one of your posts before that you do have that advantage there of being an elective, that students get to be there, I guess. They don't have to be there, so it's just something they want to do, and I think that's a big advantage that you have. I teach elementary, kindergarten through 5 computer. Most of them enjoy it, but then there's times when we work on some typing skills, it's just hard to build in that motivation. They don't understand how important it's going to be, especially with their future. I mean, everything's revolving around computers. But
teaching 5th graders how to type, huh?
Yes. Oh. Yeah. Touch typing. Yep. So you can guess that they're not really motivated to do that all the time.
You must have all the patience in the world. That's all I'm saying.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, I've actually substitute taught for some classes that were typing classes, and yeah, it's amazing how quickly they keep trying to remove those covers that get put on the keyboard so they can learn how to do the keystrokes. Yeah, it's they are constantly trying to pull those off so they can just use the keyboard.
Yeah, as far as the flow theory, and this was another one you kind of brought up earlier, I don't know how I could create the flow. I mean, it has to go with motivation. If they're really into it, they're going to be captured. The lessons I have, there's a beginning and an end. And if they like it, they're really going to get into it, and then they get that flow where they're kind of building. But there's nothing like a game where they have to finish this in order to do the next thing. So I know creating flow theory in a graphic class, I don't know if that they go along together or not.
Yeah, flow is definitely strongly tied into motivation. That is definitely true. If they're not motivated in doing it, or then they're just never going to have that moment of complete focus onto the topic that the flow theory requires. in math, that's another thing. In mathematics, I mean, you get a few students that, would get really into it, like, of course I did when I was a student, for obvious reasons. But, yeah, the majority of the cases, yeah, the flow is something that is extremely difficult, but also something that you really want to do your best to try to invoke in a class.
It seems pretty intermittent. I think they really have to really like the subject. They have to have that internal desire to go ahead, and then maybe they can kind of get in that flow. I don't know if you can kind of, it just seems hard to create that flow unless you've got the right audience.
Yeah, I think one of the restrictions too, just in the traditional teaching sense, is time constraints. And I mean, you introduce the lesson and get them going, and then by the time they maybe would get into it enough, it's time to leave the class. So it's really hard to even enter that flow state because they can't get into it enough and do it on their own before it's time to go and on to the next thing.
Yeah, I can see how that would work for gaming at home. You've got like an endless amount of time, then yeah, you really get into it. But you're right, within the time constraints of a classroom, that's, as soon as you start getting really involved, the bell rings and then you got to go to another class. Yeah.
Back to the motivation, though, I was just kind of looking at the different theories in there and looked at the two common ones I noticed were just the elements of challenge and curiosity. And I think those are big in increasing motivation and promoting more motivation. Is, you have that balance where it's just beyond their skill level, but they want to achieve more. They're eager to obtain the challenge. And then it's open-ended enough that they're curious enough to just keep going and progressing throughout whatever it is they're doing.
For me, motivation always seems to work is at the beginning of class, show samples of what other students have done in the past. A lot of them come in with their eyes open, thinking they can't do this, but you show them, wow, look, you can do this if you stick with it, and I think that creates a lot of motivation right off the bat, and then they really get into it, and then if they can see what they can do, or at least some of the boundaries out there, what they can go for.
Yeah, a big one on motivation too is, at least when it comes to mathematics, is I try to also relate as much of it as I can to their interest. Again, statistics is really great if you have the students that are into sports and stuff. You can guide the statistics towards understanding how the ratings and all for sports work. So, that's something I like to do there is try to relate as much of the subject matter that I'm working with to the students' interest so they can see how it's actually applied to what they're doing.
I think that also goes back to I think it's Keller's theory of motivation, the ARCS model, and the relevance. I mean, how often do you hear kids say, why am I going to do, why do I need to learn this? When am I ever going to use it, And so if we could increase that somehow, or relate everything, make it relevant to them, I think that would definitely help build the motivation.
I'm still struggling a little with flow because I think that's such a great, it seems like if you're interested in something, you're challenged by it, you really get into that flow. And I just think that's sort of one of those things that everyone's trying to get. If you package a game or you're packaging a curriculum, you're trying to achieve that flow. It seems like the ultimate kind of what you want your students to have when you teach.
Yeah, I just don't see how. I mean, again, back to the traditional teaching sense, we teach in blocks, kind of, English for 40 minutes, math for 40 minutes, or however long it is. I don't know how we can work flow in there, really, but I agree that it's ideal, and maybe we need to move away from the traditional classroom teaching like we do now. And
in time, I guess, if you were flexible with time management, maybe you can extend a course.
Well, one thing that was actually discussed back when I was first working on my bachelor's degree was interdiscipline classes, where you would get together with teachers from, say, the physics class, the math, the English, and you would actually try to work together to create one lesson that would incorporate elements from each of those classes together for the students. But yeah, in the traditional school system, that's practically impossible to actually realize, because not all the students have their physics class, their English class, their math class all back to back using the same or similar teachers, and that's what you'd have to do. So it would have to be something, it would almost have to be engineered to be that way, in order for that to ever kind of work. But that is something that was suggested at one point when I was in my bachelor's degree that I thought would be a great idea. Unfortunately, the real world, it just will never function in such a way that would make that possible.